be implemented evenly right the way across the 28 member states. So it really is about financial protection because that is a rather loosely defined subject within the directive. So, for example, there are companies, English companies, that have already relocated to other countries in the European Union. And the problem for consumers is that whilst you have, I would say, quite a reasonable ATOL scheme here in the UK, for example, Germany operates on an insurance scheme basis, and it is less generous. Spain is looser on the rules than what we have here in the UK. And so therefore, these changes, and this is about the development of the single market, and I'll come to that in a second, but for consumers, there's a lack of clarity, particularly on consumer financial protection, as to exactly what is protected and to what level of protection they've got. And this is the problem where you have the argument that's been going on for quite a few years about whether airlines, for example, should be included or not, and the desire of the European Union to really extend out and develop the single market. Well, you know, and of course I would say this, the single market is not just about business. The single market is also about the consumer. And if you have an imbalance between protections for consumers as well as for business, then you've got a single market that isn't working. And I'm afraid the only way that they're going to resolve this is to implement level rules right the way across the European Union.
An attempt to do the level rules is the EU Package Travel Directive, which I think's finally had all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, but it still needs to be voted on. What does Holiday Travel Watch think of the format of it at the moment?
Well, I have to say, John, we're generally pleased with the new Package Travel Directive because if I just wind the clock back a bit, in 2005, the debate in the travel industry and indeed politicians in Brussels was about repealing the Package Travel Directive and opening up a free-for-all. And we were very much the lone voice back in 2005, right the way through to 2007 into 2008. And by 2007-8, the debates in Europe had changed. The Commission had changed its mind that we needed an updated Package Travel Directive, and indeed the travel industry itself came round. So what is good really from the directive? Well, I think the issue of significant change has been upgraded. It's provided more clarity on that particular point. Risk destinations, so for example, like we've seen in the past in Egypt and Tunisia and places like that, there's a requirement for more openness and a right to refund before departure. That's a really important point. And importantly, it's the closing of the DIY loophole. I don't think it's completely closed, but you know what? I think the majority are now going to be caught by the new directive. And what is really important, and you know, in 2010, I presented to the 28 member states as to what we thought should be put into the new directive. And one of the things that we asked for was for these companies, travel companies, to state whether or not they were selling a package. It seemed perfectly common sense to us that if something is a package, then it's fairly clear. If it isn't a package, then it needs to be made clear. And the new directive imports that addition to it. You know, as I say, generally I'm very pleased, but it's like every single new law that comes in. We'll see how it operates, and I dare say there will be challenges as we go.
Keep up to date with travel news by liking my page, facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Coming to the end of my chat with Frank from Holiday Travel Watch. We talked about rules and regulations, but Holiday Travel Watch is more than just that. It's about helping the consumers too. So I wanted to know what kind of problems the organisation's working on at the moment?
The primary one at the moment is cabin air quality, and you've probably seen quite a bit of that in the TV and the press recently. Mm-hmm. And, we have a number of consumers now coming to our helpline who tell us about their experiences on flights and experiencing fume events, and some are suffering with the effects of that exposure, and others are not. And it's about helping to guide consumers around that problem. On the political side, just to give you an example of the kind of stuff we're doing, we've been arguing with EASA, which is the European Aviation Safety Agency, for the introduction of a passenger's right to know, which is, I think, fairly fundamental. If you've got fumes in the cabin, passengers should be told that you've had fumes in the cabin. I mean, they know that already, but they should also be told why it happened, what caused it, and what they were exposed to, and the kind of information they need to be given so they can take it off to their medical practitioners. And I'm off to Paris next week to meet with the great and the good from around Europe and the United States to talk about how to develop a standard so that our cabin air can be clean. And we are presenting, Holiday Travel Watch are presenting major proposals in how we can bring a bit more clarity into how these standards can be constructed. And I will say already there's tremendous opposition to what I have to say and what I'll be saying in Paris next week. But it is all to the ultimate goal to remove the risk, the risk for airlines, the risk for pilots and crew and passengers. And, if what we propose leads to that and leads to a safer aircraft environment and less complaints, then that surely has to be a good day's work. The other areas that we're looking at is one which I think you might find interesting, John, is we're looking into the case of passengers flying back from Bulgaria who bought their duty-free. The flight had been changed to land in Belfast and then go on to Bristol. And they got to Belfast, they were all tipped off the plane, and those who were going on to Bristol were moved into another passenger area, and they had all their duty-free confiscated. And, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Yeah. And no one is talking to these passengers, not the Civil Aviation Authority, not the airports themselves, not the border agency, no one. And so what we're trying to do is trying to get to the bottom of this. I think I know why it happened. I think it's because of this 100 mil rule of bringing liquids on board the aircraft, but the argument surely must be they were already on the aircraft and they were legally on the aircraft, and the passengers haven't been moved into a general public concourse. So I think there's an issue there, but I discovered, John, that this is a problem, not just here in the UK, but throughout Europe. And it's made me question whether or not the actions which may be taken under the various, or the security directive issued by the European Commission and implemented by each member state, I'm wondering whether those actions are in conflict with the operation of the single market, the free movement of people and goods. And I sense a complaint going into the European Commission. So that's quite an interesting one to watch for the future. And another one that we're looking at is crime in Magaluf, and these resorts where young people go for, shall we say, a wild week or a wild fortnight. And unfortunately, that phrase kind of implies that the young people themselves are the ones to blame. If you look at the newspapers, you can see, pictures of boozy Brits and everything else. But I've been out to Magaluf, And I've met with people who live and work on Mallorca, people who've worked in the travel industry, really decent people in the travel industry who have whistleblowed to me, and have taken, great courage that they've approached me to highlight what they believe is wrong. They love the islands, they love the country they live in, and they hate to see what's going on with tourism there. And I've been asked, and I've done my own little undercover investigation, and we'll be doing more of the same. But we're talking about suspicious deaths. We dealt with a rape this morning from Magaluf. We're talking about criminal gangs and people being robbed and drug dealing on a scale that would make your eyes water. And there was a lot of publicity last year about photo taking of young people who are so stociously drunk. They're taken on these pub crawls, and they really don't know what they're being offered to drink. And my theory is, the majority of young people who go to these resorts are decent people, ordinary young men and women. And I think they find themselves in the most extraordinary of locations, and I think a lot of them just don't know how to deal with it. Sometimes they don't even have the chance to deal with it. And at the side of all this is the Guardia Civil. And, I can criticize them, I think, quite openly. I'm a retired police officer. So they don't need to talk to me or instruct me about investigation of crime or anything like that. I know how it's done. And, I've read a story this morning about the rape victim, and the way in which they've investigated that is lamentable, absolutely lamentable. And there are pressures from the Ministry of Tourism in Madrid, and, we've heard stories in other parts of the island where the Guardia Civil are actually threatening holidaymakers to not make a complaint. The one lady was actually threatened with being arrested herself when she was trying to make an allegation of indecent assault. And we have been saying for some time that the authorities need to buck up and clean up this resort. And if there are criminal elements in there, then to send a task force in there to root them out and to restore Magaluf back to what it used to be.
So we found out how important you are and how you help everybody. So how can we actually find out more about you?
Okay, well, there's 2 ways to contact us, 3 ways, in fact. It's through our website, all the W's, holidaytravelwatch.com, or through our helpline, which is 0345 017 9229. Or if somebody just wants to have a chat with me, they can speak to me via Twitter. My Twitter handle is @HTWFrank.
Okay, well, thanks, Frank. Thanks for your time.
No, it's a great pleasure.
I do urge you to listen to my first interview with Frank, which the podcast can be found at tinyurl.com/Q844FUT. I will put the link at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Frank has an awful lot of information on travel, wide range of knowledge, and it is worth listening to both of his interviews to make sure that you are as protected as possible when you're trying to book a holiday. As well as being my special 3rd anniversary show on Seclo Sounds, it's also my last Seclo Sounds travel show. As I mentioned, I never thought I'd get to over 100 shows, let alone 4. And it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate everybody who's listened to my show. But it will continue. I'm taking a week's break, and I will be broadcasting a podcast again from the 10th of July. You'll be able to find it at www.johnguinn.me. As well as the podcast, there'll be my travel blogs and travel news on there too. So for the last time on Seclo Sounds, thank you for listening to me while I've been checking it out before you check in.
MK Pulse proudly sponsors Seclo Sounds. MK Pulse is Milton Keynes' local magazine, bringing helpful information on food, health, fashion, money, travel, culture and much more to 84,000 people every month. Plus news, views and what's on from around the city. If it's happening in Milton Keynes, it's in MK Pulse, and it's available online at www.mkpulse.co.uk. MK Pulse and Seclo Sounds, the heart and soul of the city.